A talking point I see often when talking about Warhammer 40K online is that the game is too complicated. And to be honest, it's not exactly incorrect. The game has a core rule system that is fixed via FAQs and supplemental matched play mission packets to allow us to play the game at a, inverted commas, competitive level. But then beyond that, we also have new books added to the game constantly, which aren't actually balanced against one another, that then require FAQs and data slates and point changes later down the line, all done digitally. Basically, the complexity of the game could be not such an issue if it wasn't done primarily by physical media. Books that have to come out, and then we need time for them to adjust and fix it by digital distribution of updates. It's all kind of fucking stupid. So there's two ways to fix the complexity of Warhammer going into 10th edition, and there are rumours of 10th edition on the horizon. If you haven't heard, we might hear about it at Warhammer Fest early next year. We may see it early next year. I hope not. I hope we have a bit longer with these books in this edition because it seems very quick, but it seems like it's on the horizon if the rumours and the murmurings and the warp are true. I'm Vince, also known as Present Kenobi on the internet. Welcome to the War Room, which is my Warhammer and tabletop gaming, miniature gaming, war gaming, skirmish gaming YouTube channel. If you like card games, that's on the main channel over on Pleasant Kenobi. So the complexity creep, how do we fix it? Well, there's two things really. Firstly, there is just the sheer amount of rules that come with having so many books, and how do we level the playing field and smooth things out? Well, we go with Index Hammer. What happened with 8th when the rules first dropped was that everyone got reset back to a basic document with basic data slates, basic points, and no stratagems, barring the special ones that everyone has. Command point, reroll, and similar. And I'm going to talk more about stratagems in a second as well, because they all factor into this, and there's more the big talking point in the video. I think Index Hammer sounds like a great idea in practice, like the idea of balancing everyone out to a 0, as opposed to this edition where old books took a year or 2 years to even get a look in, a sniff at new rules, compared to Marines and Necrons dropping and being significantly better than everything else. Although ironically now the books at the beginning of the edition, like Space Marines, are now struggling in terms of their power level compared to the more recent books, because the power creep is real, the AP creep is real, everything is getting more lethal. Hell, everything's getting less lethal because of Armor of Contempt, but Marines get more durable, but then they can't kill anything because you're paying for the inbuilt AP points, and there's a whole balancing issue in Warhammer. They'll never really balance the game, and that's okay. And by okay, I mean, it's to be expected. I'd love it to be perfectly balanced, but I just don't think it's possible with the game so complex. The problem with Index Hammer, in my opinion, though, is that whilst it gives you a very good, even playing field to then build upon, it does cause two problems. Firstly, resetting everyone back to 0 basic stuff and then releasing books means that everyone's still in a similar situation. All the books don't come out at once. They could do simultaneous releases of everything, but I think that really hurts their hype model. Also, people who have multiple armies like me won't buy it all at once, so they'll probably miss out on sales too. This means that some people get an updated book before others. I believe this is what we saw in 8th as well. I mean, you get your book and your strats and your special stuff, and other people are still stuck on their index. It doesn't really undo the current problem, barring putting everyone to 0 and then favouring others over others. Sure, I mean, it's the same thing, but with everyone stuck on the index instead of their old book that they enjoyed. And further to that, it means resetting people from what they've got now. Guard have just got their book. At time of recording, the Guard book is going up for pre-order, I believe. So Imperial Guard, Astral Militarum are finally getting to join everyone else with their 9th edition codex. And it might be pretty good. I've not really paid attention to it, but it sounds like it's going to be pretty good. If we go to Index Hammer in 6 months' time, that means Guard got to play with their new book for 6 months at events and in the general population of Warhammer. Of course, everyone can just play older editions. There are people that seem to claim they play 6th and 7th still. I don't necessarily believe that's very common. You could do that, but you won't get to it like your local club or your local store, or at tournaments if you're into that kind of thing. Meanwhile, Space Marines got to have 2+ years with their book before they got reset to Index. And I think that's just basically unfair for people to play with their new rules. And I also think it's like wasteful in terms of money. It means people have to pay more money out for more stuff again, or the book that they have paid out money on is no longer useful. And we already see this. We see books get released that aren't up to date, right? The Voltan, I believe Dukari, maybe Orcs as well, had updates to their book before their books were officially actually legal at tournaments or legally on the shelves or actually out for general release. And I think that's really dumb. Most mission packets as well get updated as we go, so you normally have a GT book that you've bought that isn't actually up to date and it's kind of pointless, and that's why I didn't buy the Nephilim book. I recommend never buying the mission packs anymore, just using Warhampedia if we're honest. So I think Index Hammer's a bad idea, and that will be the case if 10th has a completely rejigged rule system. Like we saw 8th to 7th was a big jump and a big change, where 8th to 9th was basically a refined rule system, so the books were compatible. So we may see Index Hammer if the edition changes dramatically, but I think they probably like a lot of the rules they've got going on right now. A lot of them are actually pretty good. I think the terrain rules are good once you know how they work. So this leads me to the other element, the other thing I often see talked about in videos and a lot with casual players too that I've hung around with, is that stratagems make the game far too complicated. When I came back to the hobby about 2.5 years ago, to the game in general, as well as hobbying, painting and building, but to the game, stratagems were one of the things that I really, really enjoyed. Coming from a Magic background, the idea of being able to interact with my opponent at instant speed, like in their turn and response to things they're doing for a resource system that I have to manage with lots of options, it felt like it gave me so much agency, where at times, when neither of you've got CP or you're not using stratagems, there'll be bits where you're just getting shot at and making saves, or fought at and making saves, and you don't really get to interact with your opponent in any way. You don't get to make choices that affect the outcome of the game, and thus your agency is removed. You basically become target practice, and in some games that means that you end up doing very little before the game is over if the game goes badly. So stratagems, it's obvious that they open a lot of depth, right? But depth isn't always a positive thing, it wasn't a good thing. Complexity can be a bad thing for a game. And whilst I prefer my games to be quite complex, because it creates nuance and interesting areas to learn, develop, and get tricksy and cute with and be big brain, I think Warhammer has so much of that already that the added layer is a problem. I think a lot of the older players that loved 7th normally complain about how stratagems have got. The people who've been playing for a long time. Meanwhile, I came back in at the end of 8th and I just love strats. I think they're great. I do think though there's probably too many of them. Every book seems to have a lot of strats that just aren't playable, right? There's a load of strats that don't do anything. And there's a lot of strats that are probably too good. There's some units that have too many strats. I wonder if they could just thin down strat support. The first way to do that is to do what Heresy has right now, where you have a reaction point per phase, I believe it is. I haven't played Heresy in about a year. Since the new box came out, I'm actually very not on top of Heresy, so I'm not going to pretend to know all the rules. I'll play like 3 games of it. But you can do reactions. So if you have a reaction point available to you, there is like 2 reactions per phase. So in the movement phase, you can like surge forward or you can fall back. In the shooting phase, you can hunker down for a defensive buff or shoot back if you're getting shot at. In the fight phase, you can do similar things. Do you see what I mean? Every army has access to 2 things per phase, and you have 1 point to spend, essentially. There's other ways to get extra points or get them for free, and every army has 1 unique reaction as well. So it's like stratagems, but it's finite in a way. There's 2 per phase, there's like 4 or 5 phases, there's like 8 or 10 of these reactions, plus 1 per army. That's 11, where most stratagem books have 20 odd. So that's a very easy way for us to move towards a system that is not so fucking cumbersome. So that's one option. And I think reactions should come into the game. The idea that you can shoot back once per turn makes the shooting phase in Heresy very interesting. The fact that you can pull back and push forward to like maneuver, move block, get back in a vehicle if you're getting charged at, I think that makes the game very interesting, more realistic in a way that is fun. Realism isn't always fun. I think the reaction system is great. But I still like stratagems. So I wonder if they could simplify it. Perhaps every faction should only have access to 5 strats at any one time. There could be 20 strats in the book, 30 strats in the book, but you pick them and you muster them on your army list, in the same way you'd pick army gear or warlord traits. I wonder if like picking them ahead of time or before the battle, not before the battle, that'll slow events down massively, but ahead of time, like on your sheet, I think that could then make it much easier to say at the beginning of the game, I have access to these 5 strats, I have A, B, C, D, and E, and your opponent's like, cool. There's no gotchas there, because all 5 of them are they're written down on the sheet or they've been told you at the beginning. I think that's one way of doing it. The other way is obviously just reducing the pool in general. I think that's a bit too simplistic. But the other way that I really want to champion is perhaps every unit in the game should have a strat, right? Every unit in the game can have a different strat for all I care. But it makes it very simple to understand that, like, you look at a unit and you say, what is its activated stratagem, its activated ability? And you say for 1 or 2 or 3 CP, it can do X. And you're like, huh, okay. So now you know that Howling Banshees get +1 to charge for 1 CP, or Striking Scorpions get +1 to wound, or whatever those strats end up being. Every single unit in the army in the game has just that one strat. It's kind of similar to how you do start to remember how weapons work, right? You know how bolt guns work, you know how chainswords work, you know how power swords work. Hell, some of the stratagems could be spread across, like most Primaris just have transhuman physiology as their strat. And at a push, if you think that's too simplistic, maybe the faction gets 1 or 2 as a faction-wide one. Transhuman physiology should probably be the Space Marine one, for example. And I think those are ways that can simplify either the reaction system or the one strat per unit system or the pick a pool of strats. I think those things can simplify the stratagem system without removing it, without destroying, just punch my microphone there, without destroying the nuance and the strategic depth of Warhammer 40K as a game that makes it fun, in my opinion. It doesn't remove all of that, but it does get rid of some of the very, very heavy rules bloat that makes the game so inaccessible to new players. At this point, I want to hear what you think. Do you think stratagems are good, or do you fucking hate them? And if you do hate them, do you want to see them gone completely, or reworked in a similar way to what I said? I'd love to hear some ideas in the comment section below, because I find this discussion around game design fascinating. Let me know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. That's really important. I'm growing a subscribe base over here as well. And thanks for watching. I'll see you all soon. Ta-ta for now.